Welcome to InnerVIEWS. I am so thrilled that our guest today, a dear friend of mine, opera singer Ana María Martínez. Hello there.
Hi, Ernie.
Now, Houston is your artistic home.
Yes, and it has also been my home since 2002. And prior to that, well, I moved here in 2002.
Right.
Prior to that, I was a young artist with Houston Grand Opera for their 94-95 season. So my history with the city goes way back.
Yeah.
And currently, I am a professor at Rice University and just completed my 4th year as a professor. So it's really home.
What's your take now? I know you're a mother, so you've raised your child. Now you see this next generation of kids, especially teaching. The reaction to how they see the world, does it surprise you?
It's such a great question because I feel that a combination of having my son and also teaching students that are close to his age now. I have one coming in next year who is his age, and the other ones are either slightly older or just a little bit more than that older, basically the same generation, Gen Z. They help me to understand the world that we're currently living in.
Yeah.
I think that if I didn't have that opportunity, I would feel very distanced from where we are today and where we're going. But because they are also important to me and I'm helping them shape their lives, I have to try to see the world through their lens.
Is it interesting for you, or unique, different, difficult, to live in these two worlds? And by two worlds, I mean the classical opera world, which seems very old and steeped in tradition in a lot of ways, and the young, fresh new artists and their approach to the world around them. Is there a conflict there?
Not a conflict, but it's very different from when I started. And I know that when I started, the older generations saw us, my group, coming in as, what are you doing to opera?
Yeah.
It is supposed to be this way or that way. And what I see now, the vision of many directors, let's say they're taking a tried and true piece, Rigoletto, let's say, and they want to give it wings, give it different life through their vision of how it will be staged, the costumes, the sets, all of that. What time will they set it in? It does have a bold edge to it moving forward. What I find with Gen Z is that they're very vocal about what they want, what they need, how they expect it to work out, right? And that was not my generation. So I admire that greatly. It's not always easy because let's say it's not how I was raised. And by not easy, I mean, let me just take a moment and see how I'm going to respond to this question or to this approach.
Are you a traditionalist in how you think opera should be presented, or does it ignite something new in you to see fresh interpretations? Where do you fall?
I would say it depends on the interpretation. By that, I mean, so many years of having worked in Germany, they really push the envelope on edge. They can be very edgy, and they want to make their audiences think. And sometimes those were shocking productions, but they definitely kept the audience talking for a long time. You go to dinner afterwards, or you meet up the next day to talk about the production, much like a good film. And I think that now things are getting a little more on the edgy side. I do appreciate now, just every now and then versus all the time, to see something traditionally presented. I think that's been done a lot. And there's beauty to it because it reminds us of, oh, that's how things used to be. How lovely to enter that world of magic. Because when you walk into a theater, time is suspended. And you really want to be taken away by the beauty of having it live singing, live acting, just live people, and the immediacy of it. And it's quite visceral. And I love the beauty of it in tradition. But I also want to see something go deeper. As long as it goes deeply, and that's up to the performer, actually.
Right.
How much gravitas do they have, or do they want to explore? Because it's vulnerable to do that. Then I don't care if it's modern or if it's traditional.
What about the concept of, I don't know if political correctness is the right term for this, but when you think of a musical theater piece like a Showboat, and it has a troubled past because of some of the storylines and some of the ways it's interpreted. So they have redone it, they have rewritten the book, they have shifted things, then they come back and they shift back again. So in opera, it's very set, the score, it's there. Is there place for that? Should modern eyes reinterpret these works, or should they live as they were created?
That is a great question. I have seen some surtitles changed. Let's say it's a Madama Butterfly.
Yeah.
I've seen the surtitles in English be shifted, or a part of the music where there are a few words when Cio-Cio-San is first meeting, when Madame Butterfly is first meeting her groom, Pinkerton, and then Sharpless, who is a diplomat, the comments they're making about her and her age, back in the day, it was still offensive and hurtful, even though it's just between the gentlemen, although those things should never be said, let's say. But that was respected as that's how it was at the time. And I think it's important to process things as they were. Why? It ties into why do we study history at all when we're in school, so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Just depends how you're looking at it. So if we're living in a time when that kind of dialogue is no longer acceptable, I would still like for people to know these things were said. Unfortunately, they were tolerated, but let's look at why. Why were they tolerated? What was the norm? How have things shifted? Let's honor that shift. It's like a gear shift in a car. How and why has that shifted? Why is that no longer acceptable versus erasing it all together? I think that we do damage to ourselves and the future generations if we just erase things. We need to look at them, but we need to have the patience to be able to hold that and look at it and talk about it without blowing up at each other verbally. You know, it's no need. We need to look at it.
You mentioned Madame Butterfly in that. And I can't help but think the relationship you've had with that opera, with that role.
Yeah.
When you return to it at different times, at different points, what do you think you bring differently to it? And how impacted are you by the director, and how much is by how you have learned to interpret this role?
That's great, Ernie. I could apply that to different roles that I've performed a lot through the years. And definitely all of the incarnations of Madame Butterfly that I've done have been different. Number one, depending on, because it's always, for our listeners, it's always the same music. It's going to be the same story. But each director, each production team, that includes lighting, costume design, set design, they will set it at a different time, and they will set it in a specific way to tell their version of the story.
But then do you sing it, present it differently, or is there something put in the training to get to the point where they want you to be their butterfly that you are bringing that has got to be consistent?
I would say the consistency is my devotion to telling the truth in this story, telling her truth, because it is a story that is applicable today, the kind of sacrifice that's required, the pain, the loss, the grief, the hope, the loyalty, all of that, but ultimately the sacrifice. That I have to be very committed to telling her story, and that will never change. But sometimes the staging is different. And it also depends on who your cast is. Who are your colleagues and what energy are they bringing to the table? How are we supposed to look at each other according to the director, stage director, in this moment? How do I navigate this other moment with this character? Is there a challenge with a raked stage? So there's an incline. Do I have to go over anything? Do I have to do some sort of choreography? So those are the little technicalities. The logistics will always vary, but what has to remain steadfast is your devotion to the character, your service to the character, to the story, to the music, and to the truth.
You originally began studying musical theater. And so I think that brings a unique acting chops when you're in a role in opera. And yes, opera has changed a lot in the years, and they are actors up there. I'm curious, though, as we talk, and I don't mean just to sit on Butterfly, but it's a great example, and a lot of people are familiar with that opera, is your acting, as you talk about all these different pieces that may change your performance, do they change your vocal interpretation, or does that stay set as Ana Maria delivering this song, this piece, this moment, but the acting around it changes, or do they have to be locked together?
They should work in conjunction with one another, but what will influence how it comes across vocally depends, number one, on my technique, on my ability, but also on the conductor and the tempo, the pacing that the conductor wants. For example, the entrance aria for Butterfly, she always starts in the back. And there's this procession of beautiful, I would call her friends, and they're all coming from the geisha house, and they're all geisha. And she has left the geisha house to become the bride of Pinkerton. And so she's coming from behind, and there are monitors back there, and you have conductors that are conducting the choir of women and also Butterfly to make sure that we're together with the orchestra, because there's such physical distance between us. If I'm all the way in the back, if I think I'm singing in tempo, I'm going to be behind the beat by the time the sound gets to the audience, because I'm not mic'd. So it's all of that to navigate. It's so
thought of that.
complicated backstage, beautifully complicated and well orchestrated and choreographed, let's say.
Yeah.
Everyone is working as a team, lots of rehearsal to make it so. But if the conductor is trying to hear me and he or she cannot, they will tend to slow down, thinking that I might need more time, and then that makes it much more difficult to sing. And I know that it's politeness. We're waiting for each other, but it does make it more difficult. There are parts where if you move them more, they don't get as heavy for the singer, and then that helps a lot in the delivery, so that the higher notes, the climactic moments, are not as labored. If you slow them down too much, they do become labored. So those things can impact. Yeah. I mean, your level is your level of what you deliver. But it's wonderful when you have a great open conversation with your conductor to ask for these specific moments where you need more help and support to either move it or wait a little bit more.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Is Butterfly one of your favorite characters?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Who are your others?
I would call them the ones that have changed my DNA.
Oh.
To be in their shoes has changed my DNA for the better. Sometimes I'm living in a pretty intense, sad space after having been in their shoes, but definitely change your DNA. Butterfly is one of them. Blanche from the Dialogues of the Carmelites. I think to be in that piece changes you tremendously. Yeah. Rusalka. And that is The Little Mermaid, basically, but the original story, which is not a happy ending. And that was definitely my life before Rusalka, my life after. There was an existential awakening in portraying this character. So she definitely changed my DNA. And most recently, I just finished a production in LA Opera of Ay Nada Mar, which translates into Fountain of Tears, by Golihov. And this is maybe 22, 23 years old. It's a fairly modern piece. Yeah. And it surrounds the death of Federico Garcia Lorca, the poet and playwright and political activist, during the rise of the Franco regime. So the fascists wanted him out, and he was too much ahead of his time and presented too many threats to their ideal. Their ideal was oppression, and he wanted freedom, not just for himself, but for everybody. Political freedom, freedom of speech, personal freedom, just to be. And his dear friendship, she was his muse, with Margarita Xirgu, the actress turned company owner. She begged him to leave Spain because she knew that it wouldn't end well. And she left, but he didn't. She couldn't convince him. Right. So this piece is the last few minutes of her life, and she's telling her student, because she was also a teacher, she's telling her student about all of these important moments in her life, and Federico, and all of those memories are playing out in front of the audience. So you go back and forth between present time and past, and then she passes. And you also see the death of Lorca, and you see the death of Margarita, and then how their spirits continue on. It's really beautiful, and it's a poignant story. Yeah. And it's short. It's just under 90 minutes, straight through. And once it starts, it's like a train that just left the station. But that one, we had our last performance just a few days ago, and I'm still processing that. I'm still in that space. So these pieces don't leave you. And that's when I know that they've changed my DNA.
Rusalka, you were talking about, and you said before and after doing it. What was the change in you?
I feel that part of me, I didn't realize it at the time, was asleep until I portrayed her, and then I woke up.
What woke you?
What woke me up? I think it was a combination of the music, of her existential angst, of her wanting to be just wanting to become. She felt that there was so much more inside of her that she wanted to be. And I think that that, in a way, has never really left me. And I hope it doesn't leave any of us. Sometimes we think we've arrived, especially if someone is reaching retirement age. Some people look forward to that and say, oh, there's so much more to do. My point is, there's so much we haven't yet done.
Right.
And so I think that at that time, I was recently a mother. My son had just turned 2. And so there was the newness of motherhood. There were things I think I was just denying myself, and just certain truths. And I felt that I could be free. So I think it was the music. I think it was the storyline of what she was going through. That particular production, which we did do in Houston years after, was very physical, very acrobatic. And there's a lot to be said about movement. When we move, we feel. Mm-hmm. And if we don't move as much, we don't feel as much. And if we've observed people that are going through a lot emotionally, they either need to move a lot to get it out, or they stop doing that because it's too overwhelming and they just stop moving.
Interesting you would say that, because I think a lot of people who are familiar either with classic opera or haven't experienced as much opera today have this idea of the opera singer standing planted on the stage and delivering, and great emotion comes with it and all that. But then you talk about the motion, the movement too, add that together.
Yes, yes. And every production of Rusalka I've done, I've made sure that I am quite physical in it, because I know I personally need that to really feel it, the nitty gritty of it. And so I have a dance background, but I've learned not to say that, even though I am saying it on air.
Because they're going to make you dance too much?
Well, they give me very complicated things to do, which can take dancers 2 minutes, and it might take me a good week of every day. And anyway, I kid, but I say I move. I have a movement background. But movement is very much part of telling a story, and every character will have their different body language, which is important because you cast a silhouette many times. Let's go back to Butterfly. When I was doing my first one, I was able to locate a dancer. She was part of a troupe, and I would say she was a stunning woman and probably in her 60s, who knew the tea ceremony, who could teach me how to stand, how to move. She even went as far as telling me, I think it was the 16th or 17th line on the tatami mat, that is where I needed to stop and kneel. How do I kneel? How do I get up? How are my arms positioned? The elbows too far out? That's masculine. It has to be further in. The palms on the upper thigh. The tilt of the head is important, but never to look coy. It has to be, there's definitely, depending on the scene, but there's a message in that. And when you move, let's say in the Western world, when we're going to move right, our right leg will lead the way. And here it's important to close the space where you are before you go in the next direction. So she taught me you take your left foot and turn your toes right. So you're actually close. It's like you're making you're squaring off that space before you go. And it does change your entire body movement. So that became integral to every butterfly I've ever done, because I know that the silhouette is important to tell the story.
Yeah.
And the reason I went to such detail is that because it's not my culture, I'm not from Japan, but entrusted to tell this story, I must honor every aspect of that culture and of a woman, especially of that age, of that era when the story was told or when the production is set, so that I can do my best to also be physically as honest as I can be.
When you are in character on stage, what's actually going through your mind?
It depends on a lot of moving parts. I think with Butterfly and Rusalka is when I've been able to go deepest into the soul of the character. And there are times when emotion really takes over. And then I don't even, let's say, notice it until after the fact. And that's when I know I've been in the zone. If it's a very musically complicated piece, and I'm not talking about a lot of high notes or vocal acrobatics, but sometimes it's just counting, meter, what's our time signature? For those that I'll just say 4/4, like a 4 over a 4 is 4 beats per measure. Quarter note gets the beat. But sometimes you go from 4/4 to 3/4 to 2/4 to 5/8 to 6/8 from measure to measure. And then you have dotted rhythms, which tie over to the next, where your rhythm is different than what the orchestra is doing or your colleagues are doing, and how to stay precise. And that's where oftentimes a prompter can be your lifesaver, because you have the conductor, but then you have a prompter who can really be there to help in times of need.
So all that's going on in your head, thinking about that.
It's multitasking, yeah.
Are you disciplined enough, and I'm sure you are, to close off the rest of the world in your thoughts? Or can you find yourself, this is happening in my world right now, but this is happening in her world? How do they coexist?
So my
performing?
personal world and the world that I'm entering in, we're human. We're all human.
Right.
And so we have different things that are pulling at our heartstrings at different times: worries, concerns, family, and I do my best to envision that my situation, whatever it might be, I can put into a suitcase. And I say to myself, and I say to that suitcase, I'm going to put you here at the door, and I promise that once this job is completed, I will pick you right back up, and I will go through you piece by piece. And what's interesting is that after a performance or a rehearsal, I feel more organized, both mentally and emotionally. And I bet you it has to do with both hemispheres of the brain in such synergy when you're navigating so many different moving parts. You're navigating language, you're navigating music. And in music, you've got to count so much. You're also aware of your colleagues. You're aware of the staging. In this piece, Aina Damar, there was choreography involved as well, which none of it was acrobatic, but it was tricky, and you had to be so precise, and you're doing it with a group of professional dancers, and you have to be at their level. So it's a lot of that as well. So again, that's why I think I feel more organized, but it is a job. I have to remember that. In other words, people aren't coming to the theater to see me distracted by other things. And if it's an emergency, that's another issue. But thankfully, there's a village in one's life that you can say, I need you to hold this for me right now. For the next 2 hours, for the next 3 hours, I need you to hold this, and I'll pick it up right after I finish. That's when it's intense.
It's funny that you say that. At points where I've had the most stress or difficulty in my life, and I'm very bad at sleeping. I'm not a good sleeper.
I'm not good either at that.
And what I learned, my trick was take all that stuff you're worrying about, and I actually visualized a little box by my bed, put all of that in there, and know in the morning I'll get that box and I'll take it back out. So I'm not forgetting you. And that helped me learn to sleep when I'm really stressed and troubled. And to hear you say such a similar thing makes me like, maybe there is something to this. Maybe it does work.
And I have to do that for sleep as well.
Yeah.
I've only done it for work. I haven't taken that into account, because I think, when we put our head on the pillow, the thoughts are racing. Yeah.
Take me back for a bit. Your mom was also an opera singer. This bug has been in the family.
Yeah.
When did it first ignite in you? And how much was it her and what she did? And how much do you think was something just innately in you?
Well, I think that being around it made me a theater kid, so to speak. But the genre itself did not speak to me until much later. And I saw it as her jam, not mine. Mine was musical theater, rock, Fleetwood Mac, Billy Joel. I'm so fortunate that I was a very young child, but here nonetheless, when Fleetwood Mac's Rumors came out. Glass Houses, I believe that's Billy Joel's album. When that one came out, I was still in single digits, but I noticed them, and I was listening to them, and I was analyzing them without realizing I was analyzing this music. So I went to the Boston Conservatory for 1 year as a musical theater major. Before that, I did in high school, Oklahoma. I was a sophomore, and I was given the role of Laurie, which blew my mind, because I thought usually the older people get the the gift of that, the tremendous gift was, hey, kid, you've got something there. And before that, I had sung in choirs, and I always sang the alto line because I loved the inner voices. And I didn't dare to think that I had that kind of gift. I just thought that's more my mother's thing. It's not my thing. So I go to the Boston Conservatory, and my teacher says, all right, dear, well, your voice is lovely, but given how musical theater is moving right now, I don't think that this is where you will shine. You will probably not make it, and you need to consider classical music. And I was devastated. I was devastated because my dream was musical theater, but it was starting to go into more of a rock direction, and no one had a crystal ball. Where was it going to go from then?
But how fortunate that you had a teacher that would say that. How different your life would have been.
Her name is Mary Saunders, and she became the head of the voice department at the Boston Conservatory, and she was very wise to tell me that. She told me with great kindness, but it still devastated me. Yeah. And I cried for about a week. Oh. And then, but I got over it, yeah. And so then I thought, well, maybe I should give this a chance. So then I did a lot of thinking for the rest of that year, and I auditioned for Juilliard, and I was fortunate to be accepted. And so I went back to New York, where I grew up, and did my undergrad, and then auditioned for the master's and continued on for my master's at Juilliard. And that's where I found my thing. Now, this I share because it helped me, and I hope it helps our listeners. When we decide to go into a profession that one of our parents or both are in, it can be intimidating. And there could be, my mother never said this, but I was afraid of this. Don't surpass your mother. You can't surpass your mother. You can't be better. You know, how dare you? And again, she never said that, but I was afraid of that. And so then it was my dad who said, you're not taking anything away from her if you excel. That's your gift. That's between you and your maker. So you just have to discover it through your own eyes, which is what I did. So then I started from zero, really studying opera and classical music and art song truly through my own lens and not necessarily what I had grown up hearing. Yeah. Because I had to see it for myself. And that's what I hope our listeners can take away from that. Because how many people shy away from doing something that is naturally their gift, but they're afraid they might be taking something away from someone they love. They're not.
Or fail in the shadow of someone.
But there's fear of failure, but there's also fear of success.
Yeah.
And we don't pay enough attention to fear of success.
To go back to the moment where you're told, this isn't for you, you should try something else. I'm curious how that plays out with you as a parent and what you've said to your son ever when we all have these dreams and we think, and especially as we were talking at the beginning about how this young generation approaches things very differently. There are all participation awards. There's all of this. Is there something as a parent you've instilled, you think, in your son or you could instill in others about recognizing where your gifts truly lie?
Well, I think it's important to expose children, whether they are our own or the children in our family or our community, to everything that's out there, everything that they can try, sports, clubs, theater, music, anything. Just try it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it, but you might like it even for a while. And all of that will teach you something. It'll teach you something about yourself, and it'll teach you accountability and seeing yourself improve with practice. My son has had a lot of interests, and he's tried different things. And ultimately, early on, he discovered that his thing is computer science, and specifically coding. And that's what his passion is all about. He also has a beautiful singing voice and has taken voice lessons. And he thought for, a while that maybe he should study that. And then he also thought that maybe he should study philosophy and literature. But ultimately, truly, his passion is computer science. Yeah. And I said, go with what makes you happy. So what I told him when he was younger, and it's something my father said to me, is we're all born with many gifts. And it's up to the individual to identify the one gift through which they want to reach their highest potential, the one gift they want to devote their lives to. And once you do that, I think other aspects of your life fall into place. You're following your passion. And people listening might say, well, what if what I like to do doesn't apply to a job? And I'd say, well, look really hard, because part of what you love to do could apply to a career and to a job. Then you've really hit the jackpot. If it doesn't, then please keep it as a very important part of your life, as a hobby, as something that you do even on a volunteer basis. But if you can find a way to marry your talent and interest with a profession, then you're golden.
I want to go back to this and I want to move on to something else, but I want to go back to, as a teacher, have you had to have that hard talk with someone where you've said, this may not be your gift. Enjoy it, appreciate it, but maybe you should look elsewhere?
I have not. I would tell you I'm blessed to have tremendous students.
Okay, good.
And also going into Rice, it's such a small program, very selective, that it's really the top level that's getting in. But there's another reason why I won't say that. It's not up to me. And when I was at Juilliard, I was a late bloomer. And while I got in, there were some teachers that doubted whether I'd actually make it or have a career at all. And I got wind of that, and it was devastating. And I'm so happy to still be at it today. I'm in my 31st year of my career or so, and that's, after the Young Artist Program even. So I am not the one to say you'll have a career or you won't. What I can say is if there are things that are mental distractions, fears, potential of self-sabotage, I would gently bring up, hey, I'm seeing a pattern here, and I'm thinking that this could get in your way because the gift is there. But what other stuff are you navigating? You don't have to tell me, but you need to look at this to make sure you don't shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
That kind of conversation I can have, but they're all tremendously gifted. Yeah.
So take me all the way forward. Unveiling. You are doing a concert here in Houston, May 31st at the Hobby Center. What can people expect?
So this is a brand new thing for me.
Yeah.
To put together something that is actually much more personal. So by nature, a recital is going to be intimate, and it's usually piano and soloist, maybe some other instruments, maybe a guest or two. That sort of thing can happen in a recital. And I like to do, and I've done them for years, all Spanish language recitals, different pieces and different periods of music, but all Spanish. But this one is actually more personal, and it's going to be basically a story of my life, section to section. How did I get here? And then this next here, how did I get there? And then how did I get there? So there will be conversation there as well. There will be a little bit of storytelling and story sharing to make it more just understandable to people, because they might see somebody that's been doing this for over 30 years and think that everything is nicely put together since day one, but it's not so. And so there will be some musical theater, there will be some opera, there will be some Spanish selections.
Any Fleetwood Mac or Billy Joel?
No, I wish. So I mean, I want it to sound like Stevie Nicks, but my voice doesn't do that. So the songs would just not sound the same. No, not in this incarnation. Maybe the next one. But it's a very personal journey. It's a very personal story, and I hope it'll be fun and some funny parts. But it starts in my early childhood and then into training years and then career, and longing for my beautiful Puerto Rico that I left when I was a child. And I did go back often, but it was just not home anymore. And then I was here. So there's touching base on that, meaning here, anywhere that's outside of there.
Yeah.
And where do I fit in? How do I fit in? And all of that, which so many people can identify with.
When you left Puerto Rico, came right to New York City?
Yes.
I can't imagine two different places.
It was a shock, such a shock. I was 6 years old, and I'm an only child, but many, many cousins that are really my siblings. And I went from aunts and uncles and doting grandmother and cousins to just my parents and me. And my parents were very busy pursuing their careers. So it was basically just me. And that was a big culture shock. Different language, different pace, different city, different everything. So much pavement versus the ocean and the palm trees. It was just a huge shock. So I touch base on that. And then there's also the part that is more current, which is the mentoring and the teaching and looking forward. So I'm taking everyone who's coming, please come and enjoy this. I'm looking forward to telling this story, to show all of those aspects of myself.
Is it hard to put out the program that is the story of your life, basically? But you only have so much time, and each choice has to be very specifically made.
Yes.
And the music pieces, for all you've been involved with picking the right ones, how hard was that for you?
Excruciatingly difficult. And you can speak with Andy Einhorn, and
who's your musical director on this?
Yes, and Heather Gladstein, who is my right hand in everything. I have probably driven them insane because it's been like pulling teeth. I have to get this program together, and I have to get this concept together. And now I'm just so excited about it.
Yeah.
But it's tough because you're pulling from different directions, all
Right.
sorts of different directions. And it's personal, and I haven't seen something like this done in this way. So it's got a little symphony going on. So it's the most difficult thing I've put together. I will tell you that right now. And I've curated programs before, but it's had a very clear theme to me. And as long as I'm doing that with others in mind as well, and with a story that's not necessarily personal, I can do that in a day. But this has been a labor of love to put it together. And my hope when people leave is, what do they want their story to be? And part of that could be, what's your legacy? What do you want your story to say about you?
Doing this, what surprised you about what you ended up telling us?
To admit through music the doubt, inner doubt, self-doubt. Is everything going to work out? Am I going to be able to do this? It's one thing to feel it and think it privately, but to also share that. But I like sharing it now that I'm older, because there might be people that are attending that might feel that as well.
Yeah.
And to understand that that's very human. And touching on the greatest gift of my life, which is motherhood. And then touching on picking some songs that aren't necessarily envisioned as mentoring and passing the torch, but when I sing them, it's with that lens. I think that's beautiful. And yeah.
For you, is it hard to get up there without a character to be in and just be you?
It's harder. It is harder, but it actually, what helps to break that wall and make it more comfortable is to start talking. Because then it's really me. It's not me trying to look polished and well put together, because that's actually what's scary.
Yeah.
It's when you're playing a character, you're in the character. You might be nervous, but you get over it as soon as you open your mouth. When you do a recital, that's nerve-wracking, because it's you in an intimate setting having to be just you and very exposed. And you would think that doing something where you're also talking is even scarier, but it's not. Because then all my flaws are out there in the open, and it's a relief.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's a relief to show that I'm flawed and have fears. And the reason I say, okay, it is a relief because in classical music, there is such an aim for perfection. Perfection doesn't really exist. There might be a second or two, let's say in the Olympics, where something is a perfect score. There's a moment of perfection. But we're constantly striving for that. So what I tell myself is I want to be in the zone of perfection. It's almost rotating and in constant movement. And I am hoping that I can be within that space that exists in another dimension. I'm not perfect, but hopefully if I can envision myself in that space, I can get close to it. We're always aiming for that. So what is not perfect is to admit you're flawed. So that's a relief for me to go out there and say, hey, not perfect. Not perfect.
Yeah.
And
How does this differ then from just a recital to this very personal telling of your life?
There's that aspect.
Yeah.
The conversation of it. The making it so personal is not normally what a recital is about. And that I'm going from zarzuela, which is Spanish operetta, to Broadway, to songs from Cuba and Puerto Rico, back to Broadway. I'm hoping to share a brand new composition by a composer, dear friend of mine, who very much wants to contribute something to this evening. So we're working on that right now. together.
Time's ticking. You
It
guys
is
got to
ticking.
get going.
It'll probably, well, I'll tell you really quickly. I did a Giancarlo Menotti opera right out of my master's degree called The Singing Child. And Menotti was with us in the Spoleto USA Festival. He was with us every single day. And the last bit of music we were handed an hour before curtain. He was constantly doing revisions. So that can happen.
Yeah.
That can happen. No, but I hope to have that squared away in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think will surprise people who know you seeing this show?
Again, I think just the candid nature of it will surprise them.
Do you hide your insecurities well in everyday life?
I think so, because I'm feeling insecure all the time. And then people, when I talk to them, they say they can't believe it. I get up in front of thousands of people and I do this and I do that and the years of excellence and et cetera, et cetera. And I say, yeah, well, that's my job. But inside I'm dying.
Yeah.
I'm just terrified and feel very insecure. But I take a deep breath. And one of the things that helps me to plow through is, do I know what I'm doing for this event, for this production, for this moment? Yes. Am I prepared? Have I prepared for this? Yes. Okay, then just do your best.
Yeah.
Just do your best and commit to the moment and try to, going back to what you had asked, how do you navigate yourself, your feelings and the feelings of what you're doing, of the character that you're doing. And it's just truly do your best and trust that you can get back to all of your other feelings or neuroses later.
Does it ever strike you odd? It would for me. I don't know how it would for you, but you can be running around trying to help your son find his other shoe, cooking something to eat, make sure he finishes dinner. And then an hour later, you're walking onto a masterful stage in elaborate costume with thousands of people applauding you. The juxtaposition of your life must just be kind of crazy at times.
It is. That's a great observation because there is that juxtaposition that's constant.
Yeah.
But again, I go back to it's a job. It's
Yeah.
a job. I had a manager once tell me that I didn't take long enough in my bows, that I would bow too quickly. And I think it's because I feel just a little, okay, got it, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Because I got to go back and I got to, do these other things. No, I'm exaggerating when I say that. There's an element of shyness. And then I realized the audience really wants to say thank you or connect with you. And that's why you need to stay a few extra beats out there to just give them that moment of acknowledging what they're giving to you. Because also the audience has co-created with us. They are a very active part of our experience. We feel, every audience is different and we feel that energy each time. But going back to what you said, the juxtaposition, absolutely. It's a lot. It's a lot going on at once.
When you talk about the audience, too, have you noticed differences, trends, uniquenesses between like a Houston audience or somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Asia, their reactions, and what have you learned about us as a people? That sounds very highfalutin, but, as a human race, where are the similarities you see and where are the differences?
I think the similarities, everyone has something in common. They've come to the theater because they want to feel perhaps deeper than they are feeling in their day-to-day life. Because there's nothing like hearing the human voice up close and personal, especially when we're not amplified. There's just nothing like it. I've had people say that they've been so overwhelmed that they start tearing up because it's so powerful and visceral. I think that sometimes they come because they love the piece and they want to hear it. Then there are those that want to compare it to their memory of having heard it decades ago by somebody else or the recording that they have at home. So those are what I would call the very academic ones, the academic listeners. There are those that respond most warmly when they know the piece. I think that's across the board. If they know it, if they know an aria, they're familiar with it, they're very excited. I think that in Europe it's different because they've grown up with the art form since they're children, and little kids in the street can be humming a Beethoven symphony as they're holding their parents' hand, and we don't really see that in the U.S.
Yeah, no, we don't.
So there are different cultural priorities, but I do feel confident about the following. The moment you attend an opera, you're hooked. It doesn't matter which one it is. Although I always say, go to La Bohème, go to Carmen. It's one hit parade after another the whole night, and you'll recognize a lot of the tunes. But truly, everyone that has gone has said, wow, I had no idea. And I had no idea I would feel so much. So it doesn't matter to me if it's a newbie, if it's a new person coming, or if it's someone that's so experienced and knowledgeable about it. And many people say, I don't know what to wear. I say, wear whatever you'd like. I don't know the art form. I'm going to feel out of place. I don't know what's going on. I say, do not worry about it. Try to read a little synopsis on Wikipedia or what have you. There will be also program notes, and you're going to have a word-for-word translation above the stage, or it depends what theater you're in. It might be behind the chair in front of you, the seat in front of you.
Right.
So you won't be lost. You're going to feel it's going to be lovely. It really is relevant today. It is more relevant than ever. And the fact that I have such gifted, all of our students at Rice are so gifted, not just mine. They are young and passionate. That should tell us something. They are chomping at the bit to do this.
As far as when we think about opera, we think about all the old classics, and you've made reference to a few more recent pieces that have been composed and written. Are the best days of opera composing behind us or in front of us, do you think?
I think there are great days behind us, and I think that there are very exciting days here right now, and I know that there are super exciting days in the future because there's so much hunger for it. And I think that when you're living your best life, when you are creating something that the world needs, and you feel it. You feel when you're offering that. Mm-hmm. And it could be a smile to a stranger that you know is needed, and you feel that, you clock it, they needed it. Okay, and you let that go. Yeah. And I think the same thing for creating. And there are some phenomenal composers that are writing beautiful, beautiful things. We've had some very atonal things written, and now I think we're going more towards, every composer is going to have their own musical language, but we're going more towards what I find is easier on the ear, and yet still challenging and unique to each composer. So I think there are super exciting days ahead. Yeah.
Are you still as excited getting up on the stage today as you were 30 years ago?
Yes, still as excited and still as nervous.
Really? Nervous?
Yeah. Well, I just said I'm always nervous.
I know, but it's
right?
just,
Well, but it's butterflies in the stomach, so to speak. It's that kind of, What has changed is that now oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, let's just say I'm one of the older ones in the cast, and there's a responsibility that comes with that. No, I say it with joy. Yeah. There's a lot of turning to me and asking me for questions or advice. There are times when now I'm singing a different role in the same opera that I've done for so many years than the role that I used to do. And perhaps the person singing that role that I used to do so much might come and ask me for a question. I will never offer that advice unless asked, and even then do it very carefully. Yeah. And I'll often say, maybe when the run is over, because I don't want you to be on stage with me and look at me and see someone that you were asking a technical question to. I want you to see me as the character on stage and your colleague. Then we can have coffee and talk about other stuff, technical stuff. But there is a beautiful responsibility that comes with being one of the older ones. And it's a similar responsibility to being either the title character or a lead character, because you set the tone for the room. And as long as you are kind to everybody around you, everybody else will follow suit.
Yeah. It's interesting when you talk about that, because I think now at my point, too, in the career, that there are the young'uns that have come on up behind us. And I think to myself, the one thing that I notice is different for me is it's not that it's a lack of wanting to do the work or doing good work. It's the push of the drive to having to be there to do it, that almost franticness of gotta get that. Now I can sit back and I can enjoy what I'm doing and see the young'uns that are hungry for those things now, that I did what I wanted to do. I feel comfortable where I'm at, and I can enjoy this period differently than when you're making your name, in a sense.
I identify with that 110%.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think it's a law of nature. And so there isn't that same hunger or need, and definitely not a need to prove anything, but just the gratitude to be and to be invited. Yeah. The appreciation for the moment, the opportunity to get to do it, and then to be in that position where they are looking to you and to me for, how do I do this? Or observing and saying, I'm learning a lot by observing you. And that's a beautiful thing.
But don't you want to smack the ones who think they already know it all? And you're like, oh, kid, you got a long way to go.
Well, sometimes I think, hey, kid, you've got a long way to go. But I also respect that that is a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
And many times, everybody psychs themselves up differently. And for those that have that attitude, that's the way they survive going through it. For me, what's always helped is to admit that I'm terrified when I'm terrified. Mm-hmm. And to just say, I'm really nervous about this, or this piece is really challenging, and I already in advance thank you for your patience. I think saying thank you always is very important. And sometimes it is thanking someone for their patience and understanding, for their guidance, for their fun, for their good spirit in the room. But admitting how I feel has always been just like, what a relief.
Well, I want to thank you for entertaining me for this, for allowing me to walk through your life with you. I'm always impressed when I hear you speak of these things because you have such a wonderful way of putting them in perspective. And I'm like, oh yeah, I get. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ernie, for having me. And also, I just wanted to make sure that we did feature that we have Andy Einhorn in our event at the Hobby Center on the 31st of May. And also, Jesus Pacheco will be with his percussion magic, joining us on several numbers as well. I did mention Andy before. Yes. I just wanted to make sure that
you got it.
We know that he's equally starring.
Yes.
Yeah. But thank you, Ernie, for always welcoming me into your space and to this wonderful conversation that we've had.
Ana María Martínez, a true joy.
Thank you.